What if everything you knew about one of Hollywood's most tragic stories was a lie? For decades, people believed Frances Farmer underwent a lobotomy that destroyed her mind and ended her career. The truth is somehow even stranger than the fiction. Frances Farmer burst onto the Hollywood scene in 1935 with fire in her eyes and rebellion in her heart. At just 22, she signed a 7-year contract with Paramount Pictures, but from day one, she refused to play by their rules. While other starlets changed their names and attended every party, Frances showed up to premieres in comfortable clothes with barely any makeup. The studio tried everything to mold her into their perfect creation, but she wouldn't budge. They forced her through dental surgery to fix her gap teeth, put her through endless training sessions, and demanded she become their vision of perfection. She resisted at every turn. They even dubbed her the star who would not go Hollywood, hoping to spin her stubbornness into charm. Director William Wyler, after working with her on Come and Get It, said the nicest thing he could say about Frances Farmer was that she was unbearable. The press found her cold and difficult, but beneath that defiant exterior, something darker was brewing. Her childhood had been chaos, shuttled between divorced parents, learning early that she couldn't trust the adults in her life. That independence became armor, but armor can also become a prison. By 1940, everything started falling apart. Frances fled Hollywood for Broadway, hoping theater would save her soul. Instead, she found heartbreak. She fell hard for married playwright Clifford Odets while still married herself, only to have him dump her without warning and replace her in his production of Golden Boy. The betrayal cut deep. Her marriage crumbled. The studios had turned against her completely. Alone and spiraling, she turned to the bottle. During rehearsals for The Fifth Column, she drank constantly. Her reputation was in shambles. Directors refused to work with her. Producers whispered about her instability. Then came the arrests. First, a DUI that landed her in jail overnight with a $500 fine and suspended sentence. Then Mexico City, where a film production stalled and she drank herself into oblivion before police charged her with disturbing the peace and shipped her back to the States. Each incident made headlines, and each headline buried her deeper. But these were just tremors before the earthquake. January 1943 became Frances's personal hell. Because she'd only paid half her DUI fine, police put out a warrant for her arrest. A hairdresser filed charges claiming Frances had swung at her and dislocated her jaw. When officers broke into her hotel room, she fought them viciously. They dragged her to the station without a single piece of clothing on her body. At her hearing, she hurled an inkwell straight at the judge's head and screamed about her civil rights being violated. Then she confessed everything. "I put liquor in my milk, in my coffee, and in my orange juice," she admitted. The judge sentenced her to 180 days. As they led her from the courtroom, she injured one officer and knocked another down, then broke free and sprinted to a phone booth trying to reach an attorney. While being restrained, she cried out desperately, "Have you ever had a broken heart?" That moment revealed the real Frances, not a monster, but a woman drowning in pain with no one to pull her out. The newspapers painted her as insane, violent, uncontrollable. They never asked why she was breaking or what had broken her first. Her family managed to get her placed in a psychiatric hospital instead of prison. Doctors diagnosed her with manic depressive psychosis and paranoid schizophrenia. 9 months at Kimball Sanitarium left her shaken and desperate. When she returned to her family, she told them about the treatment she'd endured. Her mother, Lillian, fought for and won conservatorship over her daughter. But this wasn't the rescue Frances needed. Mother and daughter had always been like oil and water, their relationship poisoned by years of resentment and misunderstanding. Things quickly turned toxic. After one violent incident, Lillian made the decision that would haunt Frances's legacy. She sent her daughter back to an institution, this time Western State Hospital. They released her after 3 months, claiming she was cured. The diagnosis was premature, maybe even wishful thinking. Within weeks, Frances was running away from her parents' home repeatedly, getting picked up for vagrancy on the streets of Seattle. Her family realized she couldn't be controlled and sent her back to Western State Hospital. This time, Frances stayed for 5 years. 5 years of her life gone. 5 years locked away from the world where her career became a distant memory. And what happened during those years would become Hollywood's most persistent lie. In 1978, author William Arnold published a biography called Shuttled that shocked the world. In it, he claimed doctors had performed a lobotomy on Frances Farmer during her time at Western State Hospital. The story was horrifying and specific. They destroyed her mind with an ice pick through her eye socket, turning a vibrant actress into a shell of herself. He described it in gruesome detail, painting a picture of medical horror that fit perfectly with the era's dark history of psychiatric abuse. The book became a sensation. Everyone accepted it as truth. Why wouldn't they? It fit perfectly with everything they knew about Frances's tragic life. Lobotomies were real. Abusive institutions were real. The story had the ring of authenticity, backed by an author who claimed to have done exhaustive research. Hollywood couldn't resist the story either. They made a film called Frances, starring Jessica Lange, complete with a brutal lobotomy scene that made audiences gasp and cry. That film cemented the narrative in popular culture. Millions of people watched Frances Farmer get lobotomized on screen and believed they were witnessing her true story. The performance was powerful, the scene unforgettable. But they weren't watching truth. The truth didn't emerge until 1983, 5 years after Arnold's book shook the world. A copyright infringement case forced Arnold into court, and there, under pressure, he made a stunning confession. He'd fabricated the entire lobotomy story, made it up, invented it from nothing. There was no lobotomy, no ice pick, no destruction of Frances's mind by doctors. Arnold had created fiction and sold it as biography, and millions had believed him without question. He admitted he'd done it to make the story more compelling, more dramatic, more sellable. The confession should have changed everything, but by then, the damage was done. The Jessica Lange film had already burned the false image into public consciousness. Even today, decades later, most people still believe Frances Farmer was lobotomized. The lie became more powerful than the truth, more memorable, more shareable. It spread through culture like a virus, infecting every conversation about Frances Farmer with the falsehood that Arnold had deliberately planted. Yet somehow, the real story is even more disturbing than the fiction Arnold created. When Frances finally emerged from Western State Hospital in 1954, she was terrified of being institutionalized again. A judge granted her wish to escape her mother's conservatorship, believing she could take care of herself. Against every odds, she started rebuilding from absolute zero. She took a job sorting laundry at the very hotel where she once celebrated the premiere of Come and Get It, from movie star to laundry worker in the same building. The humiliation must have been crushing, but she needed to survive. She married again, but it didn't last. Both her parents died, taking with them any chance of resolution or reconciliation. Her second marriage ended in divorce. By the late 50s, she'd moved to Eureka, California, working as a bookkeeper and secretary when a man named Leland Michael recognized her in a bar. He was a broadcast promoter who saw an opportunity for her comeback. Slowly, carefully, she re-entered the public eye. She appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show and began speaking publicly about her past, though she could never have imagined how her story would be twisted after her death. She returned to television and theater, performing on stage for the first time in forever. The applause must have felt like redemption, but her demons hadn't left her completely. Her third marriage fell apart. She still struggled with drinking, and her binges got her fired from projects. Another DUI arrest splashed across the media, threatening to destroy the fragile comeback she'd built. Yet when she performed in The Visit after that scandal, something unexpected happened. The audience gave her a standing ovation that swept everything away, forgiving her publicly in a way that brought her to tears. She remembered it as her finest performance, knowing she'd never need to act on stage again. The validation she'd sought her entire life finally arrived, not from critics or studios, but from ordinary people who saw her humanity beneath the headlines. Her final years brought unexpected peace. Frances quit drinking completely, a victory that had eluded her for decades. She devoted herself to art and poetry, finding expression in art forms that demanded nothing from her but honesty. In the most shocking transformation of all, the women who'd written God Dies in high school and embraced atheism converted to Roman Catholicism. The rebellious girl who saw no evidence of God found faith in her final years. She completely turned her life around, found the stability that had eluded her for decades. Then, doctors diagnosed her with esophageal cancer in spring 1970, likely from years of heavy smoking. The disease moved quickly. By summer's end, Frances Farmer was gone at 56 years old. Her autobiography, Will There Really Be a Morning, was published after her death and opened yet another controversy. In it, she described being violated by orderlies,
gnawed on by rats, poisoned by tainted food, chained in padded cells, strapped into straitjackets, and half drowned in ice baths. These descriptions made readers' skin crawl, painting a portrait of institutional horror that seemed to validate every fear about mental hospitals in that era. But there was a problem. Frances hadn't finished writing the book. Her friend and roommate, Jean Ratcliffe, completed it for her. Critics have questioned whether Ratcliffe exaggerated the institutional horrors to please publishers or appeal to Hollywood for a film adaptation following in Arnold's footsteps of embellishment for profit. So where did that leave us? The lobotomy never happened. That's confirmed by Arnold's own confession and medical records. But were the other horrors real, or were they embellished like Arnold's fabrication? We may never know for certain. What we do know is that Frances Farmer's life was caught between truth and fiction from the beginning. She refused to be fiction for the Hollywood studios, insisted on being her real self, and paid dearly for that authenticity. The industry wanted a manufactured star, and she gave them a complicated human being.